All right, guys, it is another day, another beautiful day with Looking Through the Glass. I am Giselle. We have Sela, and today we have a special guest, something new to Looking Through the Glass. Her name is Zolal Habibi. And she is a Iranian activist, and we just like to get a truth out there. We like to she's out there seeing a world that we're not seeing. And I believe that we would like for her to share that and her experiences in it. Would you like to take it
How
off? We might have a lag.
I think we might have like Zillow.
Yes.
So you want to you want to go ahead and take us where what we talked about before we started recording? Let's tell us a little bit about your story and how you became an activist and what brought you there and you know the resilience that it took and how just give us a spill the tea. There we go.
Well, first of all, let me just greet everyone. Thank you for this opportunity. And I'd like to say hi to all of those who are tuning in to the podcast and listening in. Um, well, it is quite a story and quite a journey, but yeah, as you mentioned, I am an activist with the Iranian resistance, and I am a member of the National Council of Resistance of Iran's Foreign Affairs Committee. I have I belong to a generation that has unfortunately seen nothing but this regime in power, the current regime. I'm born after the 1979 revolution, so unfortunately, since we've opened our eyes, we've just seen the mullahs. But the reality is, like, I grew up in a family that my parents were activists, and so I got introduced to the situation in Iran really early on, despite being born abroad. So I was born and raised in the U.S. I've never actually been to Iran, but I could honestly say there hasn't been a day in my life that I haven't thought about, the Iranian people and their plight. Um, I think I was about 4, 5 years old. That I can remember that I met like people who were victims of torture and people who had escaped prison, and so they became my role models or like my superheroes in my mind because they were like I was like wow, they escaped prison. They were able to
They were
overcome these,
superheroes in your eye,
yeah,
like that.
they
That's
were they overcame so many hardships and whatnot. But I always thought like that was in Iran and we're living here. I mean, but those atrocities that are happening, that's in Iran. Like things that I heard, I think, as soon as I can remember, I remember knowing that, in Iran, 13-year-old children are executed. In Iran, pregnant women are executed. In Iran, elderly mothers are executed. So these were like the realities that I came face to face with as a child. And but I always thought that was, we're safe, we're here. That's in Iran. Until the summer of 1988. At that time, I was 7, and my father was killed by the regime. My father was a prominent writer and a human rights activist. So the regime had like this hatred toward my dad because of the work that he did. Um, and that summer not only changed everything in my life, but also it affected our entire history because that summer 30,000 political prisoners were executed in a matter of a few weeks in Iran. And it was
wow.
right at the end of the Iran-Iraq War. So the Iran-Iraq
Hmm.
War was ended in July 1988.
I remember I was born in 1979, so I remember some of this.
Yeah. Well, and then in a few weeks later, Khomeini knew that, look, for 8 years he's been able to suppress society with this, with the smoke screen that he had created, the Iran-Iraq War. So if anyone opened their mouths, anyone tried to show any kind of resistance or opposition, and we're like, shh, be quiet. We have we're at war with foreign enemy. So if you're standing against us, you're standing with the enemy, or you're, traitor or whatnot. So with that, he was able to silence society for 8 years. And now that that was being, finished, people are going to revolt because people were just like fed up to here, with the
Mm-hmm.
situation, um, over, you know, like at that time, I think it was about 100,000 people practically who had been executed by the regime during these 8 years, 7 years actually. There were 1 million people were killed in the Iran-Iraq war on the Iranian side alone. The regime had, to open the minefields, they used children as minesweepers. So 450,000 children were taken to the minefields, and they were given these plastic
Holy
keys, gold plastic
shit.
keys. Yeah, and they were told that, this is the key to heaven. So you put that around your neck, and then we'll wrap you up in a blanket, and then they would roll these children open on the minefield. So when this child would roll on the minefield, those mines would blow up, and that
Go
way the
off.
regime would have the minefields open for their troops to go through. But that's the future of your country. And so the people of Iran knew that, and so they were just devastated, and they just wanted it to end. So Khomeini knew he
Yeah,
had to
that
do
that's who's
something.
building, that's the foundation of your country. That's who's building the morals and everything of your country. And they're doing, like we're learning here in America, a lot of things that are very, very dark and bad that are being done to children, and that's the foundation. That is scary. And that is
Yeah,
not a foundation that human beings want. Human
yeah,
beings
exactly.
that aren't in it for power, human beings that aren't power hungry and just want to have a peaceful life. That's not okay with us. So yeah.
Exactly. And so the regime knew that, they're going to be faced with like a major like backlash now that the war is over. So they needed to do something to spread complete fear in society. And what was that? They executed 30,000 political prisoners who were the elite of Iranian society. They were the cream of the crop of the Iranian society. But to have them all executed, some of them, I mean, most of them actually, most of them were people who had been arrested when they were like in their early teens or late teens. They had spent 6, 7 years in the dungeons and, tortured and whatnot.
Torture.
Some of them had already had sentences to be released. Their sentence had ended, but despite that, the regime didn't, because they knew that these were, resistant people, and they would, persevere and continue to fight against the regime even if they're released. So the regime had them all executed in a matter of 5, 6 weeks. And so all over Iran at the time, people didn't know what was happening, but they started seeing mass graves popping up across the country. And with that, Khomeini was able to spread fear in society. And the next time we saw a major uprising in Iran was in the summer of 1999. So the regime was able to add to its lifeline, because at the time, Iran's population was half of the population that they have now back then. So at the time, it was something about, I think, about, it was less than 60 million. It was 50 something million people. So every family had either they knew someone who had been killed, or they had lost a loved one. And
Yeah,
so
that
they
is
tried to safeguard their
absolutely,
family, and not make
this
sure
is
that
an
they don't.
absolute genocide.
Yeah, it is a genocide. And it was actually just a few years ago, because in the last 10 years, we have been speaking a lot more about the 1988 massacre and what actually happened, and why it's important to address it now and end impunity. And once we started working on it and documenting it, and telling the world, like, this is what happened, this is why international reaction is important in this regard, then, I mean, it is one of the greatest crimes against humanity and massacres after World War II. It's like one of the main three after World War II, and it is a genocide. So that really changed everything, I think, for a lot of Iranians. And I guess in a way, one of the things that helped me persevere in this situation was the fact that I knew I wasn't alone. I knew that there are lots of others across Iran who were suffering the same pain that we had.
Hmm.
But I also understood that I'm still one of the lucky ones, despite having had lost my dad. And I was like daddy's little girl. I was very attached to my dad because I mean he was a writer, so he was at home more than my mom was, and so like I had just had like this really close connection to my dad. But I knew that there are other kids my age or even younger who some of them had lost both their parents. Some uh, had been taken to prison with their parents and had to watch, like for instance, their parents be tortured as a method of psychological torture on the parents. And like I had a friend who she was 5 when she had been when their house was raided, and so she was taken with her parents to prison, and she had to actually watch her father be tortured as a method of torture to break her dad. And unfortunately, her father ended up dying under torture. So that was, something that, lived on in her. And she had tried to block that out of her memory as a child. I mean, that's like your autoimmune
But
system, like,
even blocked
yeah,
out, your body still knows. You know the
exactly. She
effects
had
are
blocked it
still
out
there.
from, yeah, she had blocked it out from, from her memory. But the thing is that it was still in her mind, right? So she would have
Hmm.
these nightmares about it, and she would like
Mm-hmm.
wake up from like her sleep like with a nightmare and like with a fever and like just out of breath because she remembered those scenes. But during the day when you would talk to her, she's like, no, I don't remember anything from the time that I was in prison with my parents. But she did, and we knew it because we had heard her screams at night. We had heard her like those dialogues that she would have with herself. And um seeing that, I knew that I was still a lucky one because I grew up in a society that I wasn't under that kind of suppression. I was living in a democratic society. I mean, you know, the situation was very different.
Yeah.
But that also brought a sense of like responsibility for me, I think, even though I was a child, but I always felt like I have a responsibility because I know
Your
because there's
purpose
two
was
ways
being
you could
shown to
look
you.
at that because there was some, and I know a lot of people who are part of the second group. They say, look, our family or I have paid enough of a price already, so I'm going to just move on with my life, and others should go and pay a price now, or we've done our part, you do yours.
Hmm.
Or just because I had I guess um, I've had this experience and I've had uh, I have that understanding, and just because of everything that I have been through, then that brings a sense of responsibility. That what do I do with what the knowledge that I have that a lot of people are, they don't have it. So if you look at it, the full part of the glass, even though the empty part might be painful, but the full part of the glass, you're experiencing something that maybe a lot of people never get the chance to. And so what are you going to do about it? And how is this going to make you stronger? How is this going to give you direction in life? And what is your perception of life or our purpose in life and why we're here? And I think that really shaped who I was. So like even though I was a child, I started growing up a lot faster, I guess, than people my age. And I remember I was like 12 and I would go to Congress to speak to members of Congress and tell them, this is the situation in Iran. You need to be supporting the people of Iran. And people would like look at me like, how old are you that you're having this, complex political discussions with us? And I was like, I'm 12, but I
But
understand what's happening
your
and it's my
purpose was being
responsibility.
made and shaped in those moments that shaped you, like that you were finding and you were being told your purpose young, very young. Like,
And so that was, how my life was. And I also had really, great role models, I think, like my parents. Um, they taught me what's important in life through their own actions instead of their words.
Mm-hmm.
I when my dad died, my mom was 25, and she was 25, two young kids, and she was she could have easily said, well, you know, our family, I need to just concentrate on my children now, or like our own family. But she decided to take an opposite direction, and she was like, I'm going to dedicate my life to the resistance now, because that's the responsibility that's on my shoulders now today. And so she decided to join the resistance, and so we did. And at that time, the resistance was based in the close to the border area of Iran and Iraq. Um, so we went from DC to Iraq, and that was two completely different worlds.
Yeah.
But I could say to this day, like the best 2.5 years of my life was those years, really. Um, and then the first Gulf War happened. So it wasn't safe for children to be there. So my mom came to this crossroad. She had to make a choice: either continue her fight or leave the fight to take care of us. And so, but what was clear was that we couldn't stay there anymore because it wasn't safe for kids. So my mom decided to send me and my brother back to the US, and we were raised by my aunt, but she decided to stay and continue the fight. And that kind of sacrifice for a mother, it's very difficult. And you guys are
Very,
both
very
mothers, I think you could
difficult.
understand.
Yeah.
And I've always, I mean, for years, I always prayed that, you know, she would stay steadfast in the path that she's chosen, and to always have that strength. But I always took pride in, you know, the fact that she did that. And I always, you know, over the years, I've always told her that I'm so proud of having parents like mine, and the example that they set for me in life, to stand for your values, stand for what you believe in, make
Yeah.
sacrifices for it, because that's what, at the end of the day, what is our purpose on this, you know, earth. um if if I'm just going to think of my own circle or my own bubble and my own benefits or my own interests, nothing's going to change in this world. But she taught me that with self-sacrifice, you can open the path and you could continue. And I think that's really important. And so um, I had that in front of me, and that really, really helped shape who I am. But my parents always also told me that, you know, it's our generation's responsibility to free Iran, it's your generation's responsibility to build Iran. So that was like how it was. It was supposed to be, they're supposed to fight, we're supposed to study and become something, and, you know, free, you know, build that free Iran. And so I was on that path. I was, after graduating from high school, I was going to go and study medicine. I got a full scholarship, and, you know, that was like the path that I was going on. But that summer, it was the summer of 1999, after graduation, there was the first uprising happened in Iran, 1999 student uprising. And this was the first time that these uprisings were being televised, because it was the start of cable TV and CNN and
Mm-hmm.
whatnot. And for the first time, the world was seeing it. And I remember sitting in front of the TV like 5 o'clock in the morning every day to see the like latest reports coming in from Iran, and thinking to myself, what on earth are you doing here? Um, is this how it's going to be? You're going to be a bystander and just watch on television that people your age or from your generation are being killed in the streets of Iran? Or are you going to do something about it? And so I decided to join the resistance. And so I left everything behind and I joined the resistance. And I've been a member of the resistance for 26 years, because I could not bear to be just a bystander and just watch. And I needed to be able to do something for my people. And yeah, that was that choice that I made on that day, and I've stuck with it. It has been, there have been a lot of ups and downs in this fight, but today we are seeing it bear fruit. in the past, I mean, since January, the world has seen the uprisings in Iran, the brave, youth and women of Iran in the forefronts of this fight. And you see that value is actually now, like, the ripple effect of it has spread throughout Iranian society. You see, I mean, these past few days, it's in Persian culture, we have this thing that, like, when someone passes away, or they hold ceremonies, memorial ceremonies, like on the third day, the seventh day, and the 40th day after their death. And this week
I
marks
like
the
that.
40th day of the death of a lot of those who were killed in the uprising. And the ceremonies that we're seeing, it's just like you will be in awe just watching these brave people, and how, like,
Just
how these
coming
parents are
together.
coping, yeah, how these parents are coping with the news of their children that they've lost. And, like, especially since most of those who were killed in these uprisings were in their early 20s or teens even. And you see that resilience in Iranian society, and the fact that they're steadfast in this fight, and they're not going to give in. They're not going to give that satisfaction to the regime, for the regime to see them mourning. And they're standing, they're continuing the fight. And I think that's what's really important. And that is the reality, is that this isn't something that happened, brewed overnight. This is something that has been in the making in all these years. And now um, we are seeing how it's affecting society in Iran.
Yeah, that's um I don't even know where to take it from all of that. Like so I know when so what is like your I guess what does it look like to be an activist? Like, cause like, there's things happening in America that I'm not okay with, she's not okay with, and we're not seeing people like doing anything here. So my question is, I'm gonna ask like the question probably most people won't ask, like, how do you start it? Like, how do you do this? Because in all honesty, there's shit that's going on here in America that is, and we're finding out that's going on across the whole world. And everybody knows these files, and we've got these are people that are running our country, and like, what do we do? Like, you have advice on this? Like,
Well, so I always consider myself to be very lucky to be born in a time that, at the time and the place, really, that I have this opportunity to be part of something that's so much bigger than myself, right? Because I think that there are a lot of good-hearted people around the world who would like to create change in their communities or in their societies, but they don't really have you know,
don't even know where to
the
begin.
possibility, you know. Um, well, with our movement, what's interesting is that this movement started with three students during the Shah's time, who realized that, with this regime has to go, the Shah, and he was a dictatorship. And it was after the coup d'état against Dr. Mossadegh, who was the only democratic government that we've ever had in Iran in the past, like, century. And
Mm-hmm.
so they took it upon themselves. They were activists in school and in different organizations and everything, but that came all to an end because the Shah said, one party rule. If you don't like it, leave the country or go to prison. We're not, it's the end of these type of things. And so that
Yeah.
last drop of democracy or freedoms were taken away from people. And so at that, they came to these crossroads, but they decided to take it on themselves to actually create that movement. And I always think about it because um, they were like in their 20s, and they thought they could change the path of the history of a country, end monarchy that has been going on for like 5,000 years, or
And they
how
are.
many thousand years, and then to build something new. But they did that, and they set the fundaments and the structure, and 6 years later, practically, or 8 years later, they were executed by the Shah. But what they had created in those first years, it continued to grow and grow and grow, and now it's like the largest resistance movement in modern history that has 60 years of continuous fighting against two forms of dictatorship based on those same principles and values that they set back then. So I think that we are very lucky to have that opportunity. But also, I think the lesson learned here is that you can be that change, every single one of us. It just means we need to take that responsibility and put it on our shoulders and be like, I am that person who needs to create that change. I can't be watching and looking to see, oh, who's going to change this situation. I need to be that force for change, and I need to be the one who takes that responsibility. So I think that that's like the message that they had. When they were executed, they were like 32, 33, and 31 years old.
So young.
So they were, when they formed this organization, they were like 23, 24, years old, and they did that. And I don't think they knew that they were, you know, uh, planting those seeds that 60 years later would be a movement that is, you know, a movement that is unprecedented in history, and it's continuing to strive and moving forward, and has set new standards in the political world, I think, in a positive direction. Um, I've heard many lawmakers from around the world say that the main characteristic of this resistance movement is that it has changed, it has turned its principles and values into policy. And in a world that everyone says politics is dirty, this is, it's just what we're seeing, you see that there is this one movement that it has been able to stand tall and steadfast because it only moves forward with its values and not with what's popular or what is to their in their interest, short term, whatever. It just stands by those principles no matter what the price. And I think that is a new precedent that is being set, and I hope that we will see that also spread
Yeah.
internationally. Because, like, for instance, I think that this movement has, broken a lot of barriers and has set new standards. But the reality is that, especially in the past, 3, 4 decades, we have been so concentrated on the fight because it's on a daily day basis and it means lives on the ground. We haven't had the time to really share it with the world and let them know this is the experience and this is what we've been able to accomplish and this is where we're going. Tomorrow, actually, we have our International Women's Day conference. This is a conference that we hold every year, usually in March. This year it's in end of February, but Mrs. Rajavi, who is the president-elect of the National Council of Resistance, everyone, she usually shares the experience of this movement in the past year in regards to women empowerment and what we've been able to do. What's interesting is that this movement, especially one of the main organizations in the movement, which is called the MEK, they have been fully led by women. Like, the entire leadership council of this movement are women, and not just like 1 year or 2 years. This is like for 33 years now.
Which you don't find in anywhere in the world.
Anywhere in the world. No.
Anywhere in the world. The entire world is men. And I'm not trying to be sexist or anything like that, but like you haven't seen that. That is not seen in anywhere in this world as far as we know as history,
Yeah. Yeah, and 52% of the parliament in exile, the National Council of Resistance, everyone, are women too. And so it is something that the world has yet to experience, and I think that it can really make a lot of change in the world, because our issue is not like feminist, it's not from a like a feminist view type thing. In fact, we think that, you know, these gender roles have created such strong shackles around people's, you know, arms and legs, that they can't really move forward. And this is actually in the path to emancipation of human beings. You need to have women in hegemony for at least a period of time, because there has been such a male dominant world. So to be able to change that and to create that true equality, you need to first create that equity first to be able to reach that equality. And that is the experience that we've had for, you know, 30 something years. And the reality is, I was part of the generation that grew up seeing that. So I was like, when Mrs. Rajabi introduced the leadership council of the MEK, which were all women, she had a motto. She said, "We can and we must," and that motto has always stuck with me. Like in the hardest times and the most difficult situations, I'm like, nope, we can and we must. We can and we must persevere. We can and we must move forward. And that really always gave me like this self-esteem that there isn't anything I can't do, because I've seen this generation of women who have been able to lead in the most difficult circumstances. Women like my own mom, who's also one of these, you know, pioneering women. And having seen that, I like growing up in school, I realized at one point that I don't have a lot of the glass ceilings that my classmates have, especially like the girls. I don't have those things, because I have seen such a strong movement of women that there isn't anything that I think that women can't do, you know, from any aspect or any angle. And I realized, you know, very early on that, hey, I'm very lucky to be able to have that experience and seeing that experience in front of my eyes. So it helped me grow so much more, and to see that potential in every single, not only in myself, but in everyone around me,
Mm-hmm.
and every human being. Because I think that Mrs. Rajavi always says that, you know, the formula E equals MC2. She's like, that is how much energy every human being has, but we're only using 2% of our energy at any given time. And you have so much more potential. And but she believes that, you know, it's like a in Iran, because we are dealing with a misogynist regime that has systematically
It's not
suppressed
just
half of
Iran.
society.
It's not just Iran dealing with a misogynist regime.
Yeah, but I mean, everything has different levels. I mean, at the
Yeah,
level
yeah,
of
but
the
Iran is
regime
really
is,
bad.
yeah. Well, but the regime has done this purposely, because that is how they would be able to control society. So if you have
Mm-hmm.
50% of society enchained, then you can control all of society, right? So that's, and the thing is that these misogynist views are written into law in Iran.
Yeah,
So, you know, it's systematic. It's very different. So
yeah, they're very
in
different.
face of
Yeah.
this regime, the antithesis that's going to be able to overthrow this regime is a movement that has women empowerment, that has women in leadership, that women are in the forefronts of this fight. Because these women, they've been suppressed so much systematically. It's like a spring. When you take that pressure off, it has so much potential to jump, that and that is that hidden energy in Iranian society today. I think in 2022, when women, you know, the uprisings in Iran, it caught the uh, world's eye. The fact that, you know, these brave Iranian women who were in the forefront of the streets, but that's not something that happened overnight. That's something that's been in the making and in this process. And today, even in these uprisings, you see the role of women on the forefronts, leading this fight, keeping people, you know, telling them, look, stand your ground, don't give in, don't give, don't you know, take back, and continue, move forward. And I think that's really important. And I think that's this example that Mrs. Rajavi has been able to set for the women of Iran throughout these generations, because in the in history and also in the world, we have seen female leaders here and there,
Mm-hmm.
but those female leaders were just an exception to the rule, and they went and fit into a male system. Like, it wasn't like they became like them to be able to stand in that position. That's not what Mrs. Rajab did. She came in as a female leader, but what she did was she said, I'm not an exception to the rule. Every woman has this potential. So she automatically, from day one, she started extending her hand to other women, taking them in, building leaders, and saying and creating like a whole line of leaders, and say, see, all of them can do this. And that is, that's what has given momentum to our movement and to be able to push forward. And I think that's something that's really beautiful. And I hope that one day we could share that experience more and more with people around the world, because I think, in every society, in every country, they can, take from that and learn from that. And
Most
Absolutely.
yeah.
Um, I do have a question, and you might not even be able to answer this, but have you guys noticed a change, like in with everything that's going on? Has there been a change with, even in Iran? Like, has there been any laws that you've been able to change with the resistance?
Well, I think what we see as change is the fact that the regime has reached a point of no return right now. It is at the weakest point that it has ever been. It is due to the resistance and the activities of the resistance. Has it led to any changes in laws? No, because this is the nature of this regime. If it was reformable, we would have tried to reform it. But this regime is not reformable, because the minute that it accepts any kind of reform is the minute that it's going to collapse the whole system, because it's a theocracy. It's a much more complex type of dictatorship, because it's mixed with religion, or use of religion, really. And so that is the thing. But I think that today, I mean, even if you look in the last 10 years, you see there have been four major uprisings in Iran, but you see it evolving step by step and reaching the point that today, even according to the regime itself, they're like, there's no way possible for us to return to the status quo and how it was December 27th of this year. A page has turned that can't be turned back. And the regime has entered its final chapter. And that is something that the regime admits to. It's something that everyone is seeing. And I think that's what's important. And also the culture of resistance that has grown in Iran, throughout Iran. Since about 12, 13 years ago, the Iranian resistance started concentrating on a strategy that we called resistance units. And that means creating units or groups underground inside of Iran who are local, in their own environment, so they know the city, the culture, the neighborhood, or whatever. There are people who come together, they start working together as an organized unit. Um, they serve as the future liberation army of Iran in a way. But right now, what they are concentrating on is activities to keep the flame of resistance alive, and to direct people in the direction that, like, this is the way to go to overthrow this regime. And we have seen these resistance units grow, like doubling every year practically, despite the fact that the regime has cracked down on them majorly. Thousands have been arrested. People have been executed for being a member of the resistance units, or are on death row right now as we speak. But we see it still grow. And they are what the regime fears the most, because the regime sees their defiance and that they don't give
Mm-hmm.
in any circumstances. And that is what the regime fears the most. In these uprisings, people said, one of the main characteristics of these uprisings was you could see, organized resistance on the ground, which is their signature. You could see people, being on the offensive and actually disarming the, suppressive forces or targeting centers of suppression. These are all signatures of this resistance units. And so everyone saw that in practice. Everyone who, because in the past, I remember back in 2016, I think it was, when the Iranian resistance was, just introducing this strategy to the international community, there were a lot of people who had questions, and they're like, how is that going to happen? How is this going to form? Whatever. But now they're seeing it on the street, and it speaks volumes. And that is, I think, a incredible, I guess, phenomenon that has come together, and something that we have been able to reach. And so that is what we're seeing the fruit of right now. The fact that people this time around, when they came to the streets, they said, we don't know why, but we knew what we were supposed to do when we came to the protest. Why was that? Because for years now, they've been seeing these activities of the resistance units, even if they didn't pay attention to it, or they didn't connect the dots themselves, logically at the moment. But in these times, it all rushed into, their heads, oh, that's what that meant. This is what's supposed to happen now. You could see that. Because just to give you an example, I don't have the numbers right now for 2025, because the last few days of 2025, the uprisings began, and we didn't have time to be able to put that together. But in 2024, the resistance units carried out 39,000 activities in 1 year, and they targeted over 3,000 centers of suppression throughout Iran.
Wow.
If you divide that on a daily basis, in every city that you live in, you're going to be coming face to face with this. So that, and just imagine, this is something that's
just
continuous.
Spreading the
year,
seeds, planting seeds, is what literally, yeah, exactly. Just planting seeds.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. And that is what we're seeing the result of these days. So that's why we, as Iranian people, I think this is something that's really important, and it might be a good takeaway for your guests too, is to understand what is it that the people of Iran want, and what is the solution to Iran. So because the issue that is being raised in the media or wherever that you look at, they're like, it's either war or appeasement. So you're either have to go to, troops on the ground or whatnot, intervention, or we have to negotiate with this regime, and appeasement. No. There is a third option. That's supporting the Iranian people and their resistance, and recognizing their fight against the theocracy ruling Iran. Because, first of all, war never brings in democracy.
It hurts the citizens of the country, not the political figures.
Yeah. The other thing is that, even if you look at Iran's geography, war is not something that's doable, because Iran is a very large country. The terrain is very different. So, troops on the ground is not going to work. But aside from that, we also have 100-year history of foreign intervention and the effects of it. Because Reza Shah, who was the first in the Pahlavi dynasty, he was brought in with a military coup. He was part of the military himself. The British brought him and made him king. Then when he wasn't serving those purposes anymore and those interests, and it wasn't aligning, they had him taken to exile, and then they brought in his son. And then a few years later, because his son wasn't really that strong yet, and the people of Iran had actually the 1906 revolution before, so they were after creating some kind of democratic, avenues even within the monarchy. So the prime minister and whatnot, they were elected at that time. So Dr. Mossadegh was elected by the people as prime minister, and that's the only democratic government that we've ever had actually in Iran. And he nationalized Iran's oil, and that was not what the West wanted to see. And so the CIA and the MI6 did a coup d'etat against Dr. Mossadegh, took Dr. Mossadegh out, and they reinstated the Shah.
Mm-hmm.
From that moment on, the Shah knew that, it's not going to be this way always. So what did he do to make sure that there isn't any uprising or that people don't, do anything against him? He forbid every kind of political activity or social political activity in Iran. He said we have a one party state, and anyone who doesn't like it, they could either leave the country or they're going to prison. And then he created the Savak, which was the notorious secret police who unfortunately was known for its torture and executions and whatnot during the Shah's time. So thousands of political prisoners were executed back then and tortured, and the situation was dire. And then the people of Iran revolted against it. So the Shah was overthrown. But unfortunately, the revolution was hijacked. Why? Because it was the Cold War era. About 6 months before the fall of the Shah, the West realized that, look, the Shah is not going to be able to survive. The same way that today people realize that this regime is not going to survive. So what did they do? They brought Khomeini, who was in exile in Iraq, to Paris. There was a meeting in Guadeloupe in France where the heads of European Western countries, U.S. and European countries, they discussed the issue of Iran together, and they realized they're like, well, it's the Cold War era. USSR is bordering Iran, so they were very worried about the revolutionaries, because those pioneers who had created that revolution, they were progressive movements, so they were worried that if they come, what's going to happen to our interests, and what if they're more aligned with the USSR or whatnot, in this war scenario. So what did they do? They said, well, Khomeini is probably our best bet, because he's a fundamentalist. So he's going to be against the USSR anyways. So let's go with him. And they brought in Khomeini. And also the thing is that during the Shah's time, because every other political group, organization, societies were banned, the only thing that grew during that time was the clergy, because the Shah needed the clergy to justify his rule and his legitimacy. So you see that in the decades that the Shah ruled Iran, the number of mosques in Iran went from 500 to 5,000. So this network of mosques was growing. So that was the backing that Khomeini had, because the Shah used them to legitimize his rule anyways. So that's how the revolution was hijacked. So the people of Iran have that experience of foreign intervention. So that's why immediately when you talk about foreign intervention, Iranians are like, no.
No. We've got this. Please just let us handle ourselves. You want
exactly.
You want to help us,
we have
support us.
Yeah, there's a saying in Farsi, we say, no one's going to scratch your back except your own finger. So no one's going to hand us freedom in a silver platter, but we are willing to pay that price. We are willing to pay the price for freedom in Iran.
Well,
all we're asking for is to, recognize our right to resist, hold the regime accountable for its crimes, and don't use us as bargaining chips at the negotiation table with this regime. And don't turn a blind eye on the crimes that are being perpetrated. So it's very simple. I mean, the international community, if they wanted, they could have helped with communication. There was a 19-day internet and communication blackout in Iran, and that's when the regime was able to kill thousands and thousands of people in the protest.
And you can't not sit there and say that is a coincidence. That's not a coincidence. I'm sorry. No. There's no possibility that is a coincidence. That was absolutely deliberate. And I agree with you, this is your guys' country, and that you guys know what you guys need, and you guys know what you guys want, and you guys have every right to go after that, and that we should be supporting you guys and not putting in whoever the heck we want to that, because what's going on is what's been known is we're just putting in the foreign people that are trying to help are putting in what aligns for their best interests, not what aligns for the Iranians for your guys' best interest, and that's what's going along in this entire world is what aligns with my best interest, and that's what's going on. This is all over the world, not as bad as it is in Iran, but it's getting there. It's
Yeah.
get like I can see it.
Yeah, exactly. And what you were saying, like for instance, what is being presented now, like in regards to Iran, like this scenario that the people of Iran are stuck to with this current regime or the previous monarchy and the Shah.
Which is neither one you want.
Exactly. Because
You've
the
already
people
been
of
there,
Iran are
done
like,
that,
okay,
and
we overthrew the previous dictatorship. We're not going to recycle the previous
yeah,
dictatorship because what we
Right?
had after was worse, right? So people want to move forward in the 21st century. They want to move forward to a secular democratic republic in Iran. It's very simple. I mean, it's not something complex. And our people have the potential, the they can do it. They have the um, knowledge, the understanding. They have the input. Because some try to say, oh, that's like the culture of that region that they have to. No, that is not the culture of a region to have a dictatorship. It's
that's
in
what
no
we've
one's
been
culture to
told.
have a dictatorship. They
That's
want
the
to see
that's what
a
we've been,
democratic
or
republic in Iran.
Americans and stuff. That's how we've been. I'm not even going to play around with it. That's how we've been told or brainwashed into, okay, let's support, this and that. There's the Well, that's just the way it is over there. Everything is that's just the way it is over there. That's the way they want it. But if you guys are wanting a secular thing there, then you guys have every right to have that. We, as an American, have been told, no, you guys want to keep it centered around religion.
Oh. And we want a we want a secular democratic republic. So it's
Yeah,
people's, sovereignty. And
absolutely.
we the time and era of having, hereditary governments. I mean, the time
It's
is
a
gone.
it's
It's not
outplayed.
happening. And also, I think that it's really important to realize that, look, Iran, our people are very well educated. I mean, in Iran,
Yes.
most people have a college degree.
Mm-hmm.
Um, we have the highest brain drain in the world. We're the number one country in brain drain in the world. So just imagine if all these Iranians were actually able to serve their own country, both the ones who are
Right.
living inside of the country and they're denied, you know, basic opportunities, and those who have immigrated to, other countries. So I mean, there's a lot of potential, and I think that is the true asset that we have is our people. But Iran is also a rich country in natural resources. Iran is a
Mm-hmm.
rich country in culture and in its history. I
Which
mean,
other countries have been trying to exploit and for a very long time too.
yeah, because we have oil, and that's the problem.
Mm-hmm.
That's the problem. And the fact is that Iran was the number one country in, I mean, the first country to ever have, like, the human rights charter comes from Iran. And the people of Iran are now living in the country that has the worst human rights state in the world. And it's the number
Jeez.
one executioner in the world. Just in 2025, 2,200 people were executed in Iran. And just if you look at the numbers from January, they're skyrocketing and it's going even at a higher pace. So it's really important to realize that there is a, solution to Iran. It is supporting a secular democratic republic in Iran, which is being promoted by the National Council of Resistance of Iran. The National Council of Resistance of Iran has a 6-month interim government plan. It has a woman at the helm of it, with who will be the president elect for that interim government, and then there will be a 2-year period to write the new constitution, which people will be voting on, and it'll be like a democratic system, and to have free, elections under, the mandate of international community and the United Nations to make sure that it's, a true democratic election. And so that outline is there. And what's important is that we have a resistance movement that has, passed the test of time. I mean, for 40 something
Yeah.
years, you see these people who have dedicated everything in their lives for freedom. I mean, yeah, I joined when I was 18.
I
This is 26 years
literally,
later, but there are people who were, the generations before me who have spent, 40 something years, 50 years of their lives in this movement. So if they were after power, or if they were after, becoming some, there are easier ways for them to do that. But that's not what they
yeah,
wanted. They wanted to see the
they stuck
freedom of
by
the
their
Iranian people.
morals. They stuck by their morals and they stuck by with their beliefs. And literally, and I'm not trying to diminish or anything, but literally, your story is like one that books, that we read in books about having that strong female character and stuff like that. That's what I'm like. Wow, this is amazing. What you're doing is great. And so, for our listeners, how can we help support you guys? Like, how can we help support the Iranians and not the regime?
Well, because it is a bit complex right now because of all the different narratives that are being fed. It's
Yes.
very important to, first of all, educate yourself as much as you can in this regard. I could give you guys a list of like resources that you guys could share in the notes.
Yes,
But
please.
Yes.
if the Iranian diaspora in the U.S., there's an organization of Iranian American communities that has chapters in over 40 states. You could reach out to them to become active with them and work with them. They appreciate every work, anything that you could do, be it with, contacting your lawmakers, taking part in, events that they have, or even financial contribute. Everything is really needed because we're an independent movement.
Hmm.
But I will, there's also, to learn more about the resistance, you could visit ncr-iran.org or mayammajaviforchange.com. I'll share that information with you so you have it. But
Yeah, we'll make sure we put
yeah,
all this in
feel
the
free to reach
footnotes.
out, and we, we appreciate every type of help. Anything that you can do really in these critical times, it really makes a difference. And so we're greatly appreciate everything and anything that you can do to show your support and solidarity with the people of Iran, especially in these critical times.
Absolutely. Well, it sounds like the people are the ones that I'm a firm believer in. The people are the ones that need to be able to run themselves, not these monarchies, like you stated, not these people that have been there and in creating just more, getting more powerful, getting more powerful, getting more powerful to do whatever they want. So we are firm believers in stuff like that. Um, Giselle, did you have anything?
No, other than you are doing what you're supposed to be doing. You are getting the word out. I know you said that you it's just really trying to get the word out there now and, spreading it. And that's what you're doing right now. That's, getting on the podcast. And I hope that you keep doing what you're doing because you have a powerful message. Even if it's not, if it's just for you guys, you have a powerful message outside of what you're doing too. It's if you have your mindset on something, you can do it.
Exactly. Well, it was a pleasure to join you guys today, and thank you for this opportunity. And we greatly appreciate it. And we hope that soon we will be able to extend an invitation for you to come and see a free and democratic and prosperous Iran. But
Us
that day is
too.
near. Yeah.
That would be
Yeah,
amazing.
that would be amazing. That would be like definitely if we pray for we hope for it too. We because I think we all are under, not as nowhere near as bad as Iran and as bad hard as it's been in Iran, but like we're going, there's other countries going same directions, and we need to understand these things. We need to, and in my opinion, we need to stop ours before it gets any further. You know what I mean? But that's for a whole, my own opinion. But for those of you that would like to come onto the podcast uh, or share your story, the email is 12 looking through THRU34 theglass@gmail.com. You can reach us on our TikTok and our Facebook as well. We appreciate you guys, and thanks for looking into the glass.